Good afternoon. Today's the 25th of May, and as you can probably see, it is raining, and I got caught up in the rain today and have a terrible hair day. It makes the lump on my head look even bigger than it normally does. I am going to go and have to get this lump removed. My mother's already agreed to pay for it, so that's very kind of her. She also has them, and she's had a couple removed, so that's, I think, time for me to go and get those done. But for the time being, we're not going to talk about medical ailments. We're going to answer some of your viewer questions from last week. I'm sorry this video is going out a bit later than usual. It's just been one of those days. But never mind, we've still got lots of exciting questions, and we can answer them now. So, Mr. Manning from Matty's Cars says, my question to you is, where do you stand on brown leather interiors? The only modern cars I know with brown leather interiors are Infinitis, which are of course no longer available. So back in the day, there was of course the Audi TT Cabrio with that sort of baseball glove inspired interior. I'd say that's a brown leather interior. I don't mind that. I prefer the beige or sort of the biscuit colour of that 406 Coupe. If it's chocolate brown, I don't know. It depends on the type of car and the colour of it. Yeah, I'm not really sure. But we don't come across them very much anyway, so perhaps that's an academic question. You know, if Infinitis are no longer available in this country, as Matty says, so there we go. Mr. Fergus Ogilvie says one thing, he needs triple XL on the t-shirts. Yes, we will see if we can order some of those if there is a demand. We haven't actually sold the first batch of them here anyway, so I'm not going to reorder until we do. But yes, the question he has more than that is, he says, my mother's Mercedes was quite expensive to service at the main dealer. Yes, it was. It was very expensive. That's why we're not going there at the end of the week when it needs a service. Do you think using a decent garage affects the sell-on value of the car, even though it's been serviced with Mercedes parts? I think if anybody's quite sensible these days, they will understand that getting a car done at an independent specialist like we're doing might even actually be better than the full main dealer, because sometimes the main dealers are good and sometimes they're not. I've been to some very good main dealers and some very poor ones, so yeah, I think an independent specialist generally is a bit better. Not always, of course, but that shouldn't affect the value of the car particularly. I remember I was looking at selling my Seat and possibly part exchanging it before we sold it to a friend of mine, and they didn't offer me anything less for the car because it didn't have a main dealer history. It had a full history, of course, you know, it's the sort of thing I do, but it didn't have a full main dealer history, and they didn't knock any money off, so maybe that's your answer. So, Mr. Trabelli asked, this is a very interesting question actually, when you passed your tests, what sort of car would you have bought, new or used, with a budget of £10,000? It can't be more than a 1.6 litre engine. Also, what would you have bought, new or used, with a budget of £5,000 when your father passed their test? I hope you know when they passed. Yes, I know my mother passed her test. That car cut more than 2 litres. So in 2001, when I passed my test, there would have been lots of examples out of a Rover 416 SLI Tourer, and I would have just gone, to be honest, if I'd had £10,000, bought one of those. I don't think you get a 416 GSI Tourer. I think it was a 2 litre. So yeah, the earlier ones were Honda engines up until about 1995, 96, and then they were K-Series. They had the same power up, 110 horsepower, probably a manual. I probably would have, I don't know, would have ever sought out the Honda D series or the K series at the time. I'm not sure. Plenty of those would have been available around on the used market for under £10,000 in 2001. Yeah, I think I would have just bought one of those myself. Possibly the other alternative would have been a Honda Civic Aerodeck, what's called I think it's called the MB6 shape, or something like that, or just the HHR shape if you're a Rover fan. I like those as well. You could get those 1.6 as well. I think you could even get a 1.6 VTI version of that. Yeah, that would have been a good car. The insurance on that would have been horrific though for somebody who was 18. So possibly that, disregarding that. I'm not actually sure what year my father passed his test. He did have a driving licence. I don't actually remember. I can't ask him now because he passed away about 30 years ago, so I can't ask him. But we can go with my mother. I mean, she passed the test in '67, and around then, I looked at some prices of cars, and a Jaguar E-Type was actually under £5,000. I think it was about £3,000 actually. But that's actually a much larger engine. It would have been a 4.2 at the time. So we're going to go for Lancia Fulvia, which is about the same price as an E-Type. That's a 1.3. And even the sort of larger engine ones are 1.6. So, yeah, Lancia Fulvia. One of my fellow people on YouTube, Josef Masha from Cars, actually has a Lancia Fulvia. So maybe at some point he might let me have a go in that. I don't know. We'll have to see. So Mr. Alan Simpson asks, if you could take the CEO of any car company, past or present, grab them by the lapels and say, what in the name of goodness do you think you're doing in relation to a particularly bad decision, bad vehicle that they've made, what would it be in which company? We've got two answers to this. We've got Borgward, and the chap in charge of Borgward was Carl Borgward in 1961 when the company sort of went under. The company was still, I think the company was still solvent or something, but I think the board of directors had to get rid of him or something. It's a bizarre way it goes under. We look it up in Wikipedia. It didn't really work out well for Borgward. That's why, their cars didn't last beyond the early '60s. It just went a bit wrong. I don't even think they went sort of bankrupt. I think it just kind of went wrong. I think he himself wasn't doing any favours to what's going on. So yeah, there's Borgward. Clearly the one that makes most sense to me would be MG Rover. I mean, they made some really weird decisions. They decided not to launch the replacement for the 45 and MG ZS, and instead they decided to go racing at Le Mans and build a supercar. I don't know whether that was the best decision, really. Certainly the racing, maybe not. And also the City Rover. What they really should have done is just made some versions of the 25 a bit cheaper. That's it. They already had 1.1 versions of it. The City Rover didn't really even need to exist. It didn't need it. They could have just, I don't know, possibly introduced that new car that was supposed to be a 45 replacement and made the 25 a little bit cheaper. I don't know. It just really weird decisions. Yeah, I think we'll go with that. So Mr. Sean Cook asks, which car have you owned or used as a workhorse doing high miles, commuting and carrying stuff everywhere for work and leisure day in and day out? A few cars to that. I suppose the principal one and the highest mileage was the Forbidden Fuel Chevrolet Cruze I used to own, which was a 2014. I didn't know it very long, but there were four of us driving that car. Yes, it's sort of, not all at the same time, obviously, it would be a bit cramped, but there were four people on the insurance policy, and we were doing 18,000 miles a year in that car, doing all sorts of stuff all over the country in it. And yeah, it was all right, apart from really annoying things which you only get with forbidden fuel cars, like kind of the particulate filter not wanting to regenerate and having to sort of, service the car a lot more frequently than we thought because it kept saying the old life had expired. Bizarrely, the Search Later that I had after that actually had better fuel economy, and of course the fuel was cheaper because it was a petrol. I didn't have to have the oil life sort of done or the DPF regenerate and stuff. So yeah, I used it for all kind of stuff, doing bits and pieces and running events and things like that I used to help out with. Toledo was very good for that kind of thing too. It needed minimal servicing and had very few problems and was very, very economical. It was also quite narrow. It was used for width restriction in London, had front and rear parking sensors. It was easy to get into spaces, although rear visibility in both of those cars was terrible. Yeah, obviously my thoughts on both those cars. I'll put a link to both reviews that I did on them of the early days of Tree Jacket reviews, because they're both actually in there. The first Yeah, I think it was the first 6-7 months of the channel we reviewed both the cars, so we'll put those in. Mr. David Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiasts and Trains TV was going to put a question here, but I don't think he quite got round to it, so we'll move on to the final question, and this is actually something that I'm surprised more people haven't asked me about, but it's a very good question from Paulie Galtieri. I think that's how you say it. Mr. Lloyd, will you and your lady wife be attending the Great British Car Journey in Ambergate in Derbyshire? Will you also be able to use the bountiful stock of cars to bolster some of your classic car reviews in the future? Well, I'm definitely going to that. I mean, I've seen lots of videos about it. You know, Ian Seabrook did one. Steph from My Driver Classic did one. There's probably others out there by now as well. It's very much a kind of thing up my street. When I knew that some of the cars that they got in the early sort of stages of that collection were things like Allegros and Maestros, definitely wanted to be part of it. And they've got all kinds of stuff. They've got a Vauxhall Viva, they've got a Mark II Astra there, all kinds of stuff, the sort of things I know that a lot of you on my channel really like. And well, so do I. So yes, I'm not so interested in the really old stuff. You know, Mr. Richardson and Ian Seabrook are much more into that kind of stuff than I am. The sort of pre-war stuff. It's not really my kind of thing. I prefer stuff from probably a sort of late 60s onwards. Really is my sort of thing. But there's plenty of them there, and yeah, yes, I absolutely want to go. I might even ask my uncle if he wants to come with me as well, because he doesn't live too far from there. So maybe we'll get my uncle to come around with me as well. He will be overcome with this nostalgia, I'm sure, too, by seeing all those tasty cars there. So yes, I haven't contacted them yet. I don't know if I really need to at the moment in terms of, you know, asking them for stuff. I want to go and see what it's like first, really, before I start contacting them and asking if they do provide, you know, cars for filming on channels and stuff. I think that's probably best, particularly as I'm a much smaller channel than either of those are as well. So there we go. Thank you ever so much indeed for watching this video. I'm sorry it's been a bit shambolic, like the hair has been shambolic today as well. Although there are some shambolic shuffles coming up on the channel next week, along with a twin test for no budget reviews, the ULEZ non-compliant edition, which I filmed a few days ago. I know some of you have seen that community post and you're very excited about it. And of course there's a social event on the 24th of July, and you can buy some merchandise. Both of those things are available in the description below. So thank you ever so much indeed once again for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Don't forget to like this video and leave a comment below. Tomorrow we'll have another episode of Tree Jacket Reviews for your delectation. That's the last one, I think, that's going to be for some time. Yes, social media links are in the description below. Thank you.